All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And as we're coming through here, definitely as we're going through this, if you have questions that come up for Jed, let us know. I know Jed's got some things prepared based off of what he's been doing over the past year or so as far as keeping consistent with things. So like I said, if you have questions, go ahead and put them into thread. I'll make sure to get them to Jed. But now it's my turn to introduce Jed Jurchenko. So someone that has been in our community for a while now and just been doing great things, right? He's been able to not only write his books, he's got his family involved, something that I always admire. When you can get family involved, he's got his daughter involved in the writing process. But one of the things I admire most about him is his ability to just be consistent with not only his writing, but getting it done, getting it produced, and getting it out there for sales. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And Jed, can you let people know, because he's one of our newest coaches here. If you guys haven't got on with Jed, he's one of our newest coaches. So just let him know a little bit about yourself for those people that may not know you as well as I do.
Sean, it's fun to be here. It's really feels like hanging out with a bunch of friends after being a part of the mastermind community for a year and a half, and just getting connected to so many different people through book launches and launching my own books, being a part of other people's book launches. So it's really fun. Really fun working at SPS and just running across emails, questions, and being like, oh, I know that person. I remember being on their launch team. I remember when they helped me launch my book. And so I'm just having a blast.
Yeah, that's exactly how I started in this too. I was in the mastermind program. I was someone that just enjoyed it, and they said, "Would you mind running the mastermind program?" I said, "Well, I'm here anyway. I'm here all the time anyway. Might as well jump in and start doing that." So I completely agree with you, man. And for those of you guys that are new, hopefully you're going to feel that way pretty soon, where it's just like, "Hey, this is my group. These are my people. This is what I come and hang out to do." So, just as a general thing, how many books have you written since your time here at Self Publishing School?
So I've written 16. I am getting ready to launch my 17th. That's my goal for this month. And then already in the middle of writing my next rough draft. And it's been a lot of fun. I figured out a system that worked really, really well for me. The last book I wrote, I shared that system. And I love doing that as a coach, helping students find a system that's going to work well for them. Because everybody's system's got to be different. It's got to be focused on your audience and who that audience is. But there's also some tools that anybody can use, and that's really my passion. Before joining you guys, I was a adjunct psychology professor, marriage and family therapist. So I love psychology and just the whole brain science of consistency and high performance and what it takes to perform well. And so today's going to be really fun because I'd like to show how that connects to writing and the writing process and just simple tools that help me write consistently and that I've seen help other students as well.
So just to repeat it, I think if you missed that, he said 16 books already, working on number 17, and this is in the year and a half that you've been here at Self Publishing School, right?
Yeah, so it's been 16 books have been over about 5.5 years. But year and a half at Self Publishing School, it's been probably about 4 or 5 books each year.
That's amazing. Just the putting out that many books where you're consistent with it, and high quality books too, right? Books that are like that you're proud of when you're putting them out. It's not just books that you're going through. So that's amazing, man. I appreciate it. So let's start jumping in. I know you had some slides ready. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that everybody's here, and we'll go ahead and bring those up, and we'll start sharing your strategies with people.
Fantastic. And it is telling me you've got to give me permission to share my screen.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right. So while we're doing that, I'll tell you what, I will make sure we'll make you a host.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to try to share one more time. It is still.
All right. Oh. So now you are officially a host.
I suddenly feel more official. Check this out. All right. Here we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes. So let me make sure it's coming through on our Facebook Live. So if you guys can see that, let me know. Yep. Looks like how to write and publish with consistency.
Fantastic. So I'm going to introduce myself just a little bit more because I love to have a chance to show off my family, jump at that any opportunity I can get. So this is my wife, Jenny, I'm a daddy to 4 active girls. Like I said, my background's in counseling and psychology. Super excited to be a student success coach. I'm author of 16 books, short books, but very intentionally short books. And I've learned that I can work full-time and love to write, and I can also publish consistently and not take that time away from my family. So I've got kind of a specific plan for doing that, and I'll share some of the ideas and strategies that I use that have helped me a lot. Here is a picture of me as a little kid, about 5 years old, and this is my writing why. It's what got me into writing in the first place. I knew I had a book that I wanted to publish, and even from the time I was about 5 or 6 years old, I knew I wanted to do something that made a difference in the world. I remember waking up one morning, Saturday morning, and watching my favorite Spider-Man cartoon. And afterwards, I was just kind of overcome by this desire to do something that mattered. And so I went and ran throughout the house. I gathered together as many art supplies as I could find. I brought them to the kitchen table and sat there and began to think. And about that time, my mom walked by and she asked that question of, "Hey, Jed, what are you doing?" I'm like, Mom, I really want to make something. And she says, "Well, Jed, that's great." I could tell she didn't get it. So I try it again. I'm like, "No, Mom, I really want to make something that does something." And, she does what moms do. She looks at me and says, "Jed, that's fantastic. I'm sure it's going to turn out great." And again, I could tell she just didn't get my passion or my excitement. So I tried again one last time, and I'm like, "No, Mom, I really want to make something that does something." And of course, now I'm repeating myself. And she gives me this funny look and says, "Jed, I'm sure it's going to be great." But again, I could tell she didn't get it. I felt my face turn red, my face go flush. And all of a sudden, this stream of tears burst out of my eyes. Because even from 5 years old, I had this sense that I've got a message that matters. I'm here for a reason. And I want to do something to make a difference. So it's not a surprise that years later, I said, "Hey, I want to write a book." And so for me, writing's a passion. Books started out as a passion project, but then they became a viable source of income for our family. And then even cooler is it's opened a ton of doors, kind of more than I ever imagined. So speaking, doing kids' books. The highlight of last year was watching my daughter, Brooklyn, publish her own kids' book. And that was just super cool for me to see as a dad. She poured her heart and soul into the writing, and then we got to jump online together, look through Google Images of ideas that she wanted for images in her book, and kind of do a book storyboarding together. We contacted illustrators together and just went through that whole process. Then once it was published, again, so many incredible people from our community jumped on her launch team, cheered her on. And the end result was just watching her self-esteem go way, way up. She's excited about writing, wants to do another book. I think one of my favorite moments was when we got an email from a librarian who said, "Dear Brooklyn, I love your story, love what you did. I ordered a copy of your book, put it in our school library, and wanted to tell other fifth graders about you, a fifth grader who wrote and published her own book." And she was just beaming. So for me, as a dad, that was just a really cool, proud dad moment, to see her enthusiasm, to see her excitement. So here is some things that I learned over the last 5 years. I didn't have an easy start to writing. One big change or phrase that changed my life was this simple phrase down here that writers write. And I love the fact that I found an image with an actual dictionary definition of writer, and it's person who writes. So for me, probably about 8 years ago, I knew I wanted to write a book and started. I opened up my laptop, said I'm going to start to write, and then I got distracted. Probably, 10 pages in, I thought, my grammar is not very good. So I actually stopped writing my book, ordered a book on grammar from Amazon and started studying grammar instead. A little bit later, I started to write again, and again got a couple chapters in, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't have a book deal. I don't know how to get a book deal. I don't know how to do a book proposal. So I again ordered a book from Amazon on how to get a book deal, stopped writing, and began to study. A little bit later, I started writing again, and that head talk, that head chatter, went to the time in college when I applied for a TA position, and they were super excited to bring me on. Said, Jed, you just need to take this kind of general education test, passed everything with flying colors except for the spelling portion. So then they said, well, come back, we want you, we know we want you. We're just gonna have you retake the spelling portion again. So I come in super excited, said I'm studied up, take the spelling portion again, never hear from them. So of course my head chatter is like, Jed, you don't know how to spell. You gotta learn spelling, learn grammar before you write. So again, I stopped my book. So for me, the big change came, and I remember exactly when it was. I jumped into our white Ford Windstar. I was on the way to pick our kids up from school and heard somebody on a podcast say, writers write. That's the one thing you need to do. And they talked about how, the doors to the publishing industry are now wide open. You don't have to have a book deal. You can find people who are great at grammar, good at spelling. You don't even need a big social media following. So for me, that was the turning point. Because the next day I set my alarm for 5 a.m., brewed a cup of coffee, opened my laptop and said, okay, I'm just gonna write. I did that the next day and the next day and the next day. And that really became my pattern and my habit. So here's what I think's cool is we just finished this Rough Draft Rosie Challenge, and we had over 200 students complete their rough draft. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, how'd you do it? And so this is what I found out. Everybody who replied to that almost said the same thing. They said, writers write. Anne Marie said, write every day. And when I'm away from my desk, so no thoughts escape me because we all get distracted, there's a pen and pad of paper in every room in my house. I thought, what a great idea. What a great strategy. I just do it. Writing's my favorite thing. If I can't write for one day, I make it up by having a longer writing session the next day, like homework. I just keep writing. If I don't feel like I'm doing it some days, I make myself write at least a little. Any kind of action is better than no action. I just highlighted at the bottom, writers write. Something's always better than nothing. And as soon as I got that in my head, I was able to push out some of that other head chatter. And so for me, it's simple. It seems super obvious, but that made a big, big difference. Now here's something else that I think is really fun. It's called Set MTO Goals. And I had a lot of students write back. A lot of people on the launch team say, this was really helpful. And this has been huge for me. So MTO goals stand for minimum, target, and optimal. And instead of having just one goal that you've got to hit every day, MTO goals are setting that range. So like a minimum goal, you're going to imagine you're having a super bad day. Lady over there on the left-hand side. For me, I picture, okay, my 2-year-old's been up screaming all night. Maybe the plumbing in our house breaks. Kids are sick. I'm not feeling good. I've got my coffee and it feels like it's decaf, even if it's fully leaded. I just can't seem to wake up. Probably I'm not going to get a lot of writing done that day, but I can do something. And that's what MTO goals are all about. To say, you know what, even on my very worst day, I'm going to do at least 200 words. And then I'm going to set a target goal. And for me, a target goal is about 1,000 words. And I'm not sure where I came up with this number, except I hear for a lot of writers, this is kind of the sweet spot. Like when I'm doing well, 1,000 words is pretty good day. And then O stands for optimum, and that is things are going good. I'm in my zone. The words are flowing. On days like that, I say, hey, I'm going to push myself to hit at least 2,000 words. Now, here's why this works for me. When I'm having a bad day, I can tell myself, okay, I can do 200 words. I can handle that. And more often than not, like I start writing and I'm 200 words in, and now I'm having fun because I enjoy this. And the ideas are starting to flow. And next thing I know, I'm like, well, I can do 1,000 words. And so I push myself and get a little bit more done. I've had days where I thought I had nothing to write, and I got started and I made myself do those 2,000 words. And then by the end of the day, I'm way over here with the 2,000 plus words. So this has been huge, is convincing myself to start. And in a way, this is almost like tricking myself into starting. It's breaking the goal down far enough that I can breathe easy and say, okay, I can handle it. And if 200 words is all that I get done, the truth is 200 words a day, 7 days a week is still 1,400 words. And you do that for an entire month, and you've got a decent amount of your book done. If all I did was 200 words every single day for the entire year, I'd have 1 or 2 books done. So here's my other strategy. If you've read any of my books or been on my launch team, you guys know I love short books. And I'm learning that for me, this is more intentional. I'm a busy dad. And if I can sit down and read for 10 uninterrupted minutes, I'm like, yes, that was a huge win. I know I'm going to have a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old over there tugging on my pant leg. So for me, I love it when I get a short book and I can finish a chapter quick. I love it when there's good information that's to the point and it's actionable. I love the feeling of finishing a book. Now, I don't finish many 200, 250 page books. I have to get real intentional if I want to do that. I can handle 100 pages though. So when I think about my main audience, I think about people like me, busy parents, people in their 35 to 45 who say, I want to read, I love reading, and I just don't have time. So keep it short and sweet. That's not going to work for everybody. But here's what I think does work for everybody. That first book is your introduction. And so if you're going to write a 55,000 word book, 100,000 word book, that's a pretty big, long-winded introduction. Like that's a big commitment you're asking somebody to make. So I like to think of it as, hey, this is my introduction, and I'd love to leave people wanting more. Not to say you can't write a long book your first time out the gate. I did. And if I could go back in time and send myself a note or advice, it would be, hey, Jed, break that 55,000 word book up into 3 shorter books. You're going to learn more. Your audience is going to appreciate it. I think it's key for less confident writers. I know if you're not a confident writer, almost everybody I talk to is an expert in their subject. So that's the cool thing about student success coaching is everybody I've met so far, within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, you are an expert on this. You could talk about this all day. Some students feel very confident in the writing. Some feel like, I know my stuff, but I don't know if I can put it in book form. And if that's you, I would say be a coach first, and then entertainment secondary. Experts don't have to be great writers. If you're writing a self-help book or a how-to book, which I love, I'm a self-help book addict. If you can give me like 2 or 3 things that I didn't know that I can use right away, I'm going to go back and buy your next book because I want stuff I can put into action. So for me, even if it's not the most entertaining self-help book I've ever read, if it's useful, you've sold me. So that's one strategy I use. Write shorter books. Again, it's not going to work for everybody. Some people are going to say right out the gate, I want to do something foundational and build my business. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for me, shorter books have been just one of those quick wins that have helped a whole lot. All right, I've got about 2 more. And then we'll jump back into questions. Sean, I'm getting the thumbs up. Awesome. So this is one of my all-time favorite phrases. And it's that simple phrase, it's an experiment. I think for writers, that can be incredibly helpful when your self-talk is, hey, this book's an experiment. If I tell myself this book has to sell, this book has to do well, for me, that feels overwhelming and stressful. If I say, hey, I'm going to publish this book and whatever happens, happens, I'm going to learn from it, I'm going to grow, I'm going to contribute a message that I know is important to the world, I start to get excited. So when I think it's an experiment, I always picture that mad scientist with a beaker in each hand. And almost always, like when I see a mad scientist, he's got that big mischievous smile on his face, sometimes that maniacal laugh going on. Because that scientist knows, like, I'm about to mix these two beakers together and it might blow up, like it might explode in my face, like the kid in the picture. You might find the secret for turning lead into gold. Only way you're going to find out is to mix those two beakers. And I'm learning as an author, I'm not always a good judge of what books are going to do well and which ones aren't. I'm getting better, but I don't have 100% certainty or 100% formula that's going to hit it every time. You know, my first book, I poured my heart and soul into. I thought, I love this information. This is incredible. And it does okay. Other books, I got out there and I'm like, I'm super, excited about this subject. I like it. I don't know if anybody else is going to enjoy it. But I'm just going to do it and see what happens. In fact, I've got one of those books right here. This one is one of the books that's probably been my top seller, 131 Conversations That Engage Kids. And the story behind that book is my kids were in soccer, competitive soccer in San Diego, which is like multiple games each weekend. Those extended weekends, by the time Sunday or Monday rolled around, I was thinking, oh, please don't win this game. I love watching you play, but I just want to go home right now. Don't win again and hit that playoff. But we were spending so much time together in the car listening to audiobooks. And I was having a blast asking them questions about Harry Potter, questions about Percy Jackson. Hey, what would you do if you had this superpower? And I thought that would be fun to put in a book. I don't know if anybody will read it, but I'm having fun doing this with my kids. And sure enough, people enjoy it. They read it. They pick it up and buy it. It was my experiment. And it was a lot of fun. I've had other experiments that I've tried and I'm like, okay, that didn't go over as well as I'd hoped. So I love Thomas Edison's quote of, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. All right, so here is one of my last ones. At self-publishing school, we're starting to run something called the author advantage. And I love when I heard this phrase, author advantage. This is something I'm starting to realize I have. And it means this, because you've written a book, if you've written one, like there's all sorts of things to take advantage of. So last month, because I want to get into speaking, I joined a Toastmasters group and I signed up to speak. And then I got super busy at self-publishing school, didn't prepare for my speech at all. And the day of, I'm like, I've got to speak today. I'm like, there's no way, I'm just going to cancel, because I'm somebody who definitely gets butterflies in his stomach before he speaks. Opened up the roster and saw that I was one of two speakers. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm going to, take this whole meeting and just throw a wrench in it. I've got to speak. I've got to find something I can talk about. And then I realized, okay, I don't have a speech prepared, but I did just write and publish that book, 10 Quick Wins for Writers. I said, I know this topic inside and out. I could speak on this with my eyes closed. And then I said, well, wait a minute. What if I took 3 of my favorite strategies and applied them to speakers? And so my first strategy in the book is writer's right. I got up on stage and I said, hey, I just wrote this book. Here's some things that I learned. here's my story. I learned that writers write. I said, I want to apply this to speaking. Speakers speak. And so I'm up here today because speakers speak. When people ask me to speak this year, I'm going to go ahead and dive in and say yes to as many opportunities as I can. And instantly I saw smiles and heads nod. I'm like, yes, the crowd's engaged. I've got them. The speech flowed really well. People said good things afterwards. Had somebody ask for a copy of the book. I signed the copy that I had with me, handed them the book. Now in Toastmasters, there's an counter. And I'm not great at avoiding the ums and ahs and double words. This was my third speech, and I had the fewest ums and ahs and double words in this speech out of all the ones that I had given up to this point. And I hadn't prepared like I had for the other ones. And so when I heard this term author advantage, I was like, oh yeah, I've got that. Somebody could ask me to speak on a topic related to writing or speaking, and I could do that in a heartbeat. Another author advantage I heard people talk about publishers come to you. I actually saw this happen. I got to write an article for Focus on the Family, and it was so cool because I got an email from somebody who said, Jed, I read one of your books, loved it. Would you like to submit an article for us? And so it was kind of fun to see like a magazine that I saw laying around our house. All of a sudden, somebody emailed me and said, hey, would you like to write for us? On-demand seminars, giveaways. I wrote down here, icebreaker in the quarter game. I got to do a marriage seminar this year, and this was fun. I brought a stack of books, and I knew I was going to give them away, didn't know how. And my friend John said, Jed, I saw this really cool idea. You've got to use it. And I'm sharing it here because I think you'll be able to use it too. What you do is you take a quarter, flip it. Well, first have everybody stand up. You're going to flip the quarter. If it's heads, everybody who has their hands on their head stays standing. Of course, if you think the quarter is going to land on tails, you've got to, put your hand on your tail. And audience is kind of laughing. So either your hands are on your head or they're on your backside. And flip the quarter. If it's heads, all the heads stay standing. Everyone who gets his tail sits down. You repeat it. We went through probably about 4 rounds of that. It got everybody up out of their chair, smiling, laughing, moving around a little bit. And it was a great way to give away books. So another author advantage, easy icebreaker, easy way to give books on demand. I love the idea of legacies for our kids, coaching, online courses. And I wrote down here cruises with exclamation marks and questions, because that's kind of a goal, like a 5-10 year goal. Jenny and I would love to go on a cruise. And we went on a date night. Great speaker, super entertaining, great information for couples. But afterwards, Jenny and I walked out and were like, information-wise, we could probably present info that's more helpful. Now, if we can work on some audience engagement pieces, we know this guy's speaking on cruises. Like, how cool would it be to be a cruise speaker for couples or for parents? And so that really opened my eyes for this author advantage, as far as like, hey, there's a lot of opportunities out there, and now I've just got to learn to tap into them. So this is my last slide. I talked to a pastor last year. We just went out for coffee, and he asked me, well, Jed, what do you do? I was a marriage and family therapist at the time. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I write some books. And he's like, oh, really? Tell me about your books. And so I started talking, and all of a sudden he's like, Jed, you're the best kept secret out there. What's going on? How come I'd never heard of this? And for me, it felt like, okay, I don't want to brag. I don't want to self-promote. I don't want to talk about myself, my books everywhere I go. But I'm also learning that there's a real need to fail. And so I'm learning to find that balance of, hey, I know some stuff for parents and for writers and um, for couples. And I'm starting to take advantage of that author advantage and share it with other people. And of course, that's driving me to write more books that are more intentional around courses and speaking and all that good stuff. So it's been my journey, and I'm hoping it was helpful.
Thanks, man. I got to tell you, there's a lot of really good stuff as far as how you structured your thing. And so one of the things that really stuck out to me is being intentional with your word count. So when we're talking about being productive and being consistent, I use that same exact process with mine. And I think it's extremely helpful. I actually put a very similar minimum word goal. And when I do so, I'm able to say, okay, if I can get just these words done, then I can move on. And typically once you hit that, you hit your stride. So it's like, oh, once I got 200 in, actually I'm just warming up, and now I feel like I can get more. But it wasn't so daunting having that goal of 1,000. But typically when I sat down, it was very rare for me to get less than 1,000. But having that word goal made it extremely important to say, oh, it's not too much of an idea. And I know we've talked about this, things like, writers write, it's about being there every morning. Inspiration hits every morning at 9 a.m., right? You sit there and you have a consistent, don't break the chain kind of attitude, and it can continue writing. So I say those things are really helpful. And for those of you there were several people here that said kind of that MTO goal is really helpful. And I would highly encourage anybody out there to be consistent with that part of it. Now, I'm going to get into a couple questions. I had one for you first, and that's you've been consistent not just getting the one book, but you already have plans for the next book, and then you're getting ready to, how are you able to be consistent with your writing process while you've got your marketing and other things going for other books? How are you able to say, okay, I'm going to make sure I continue to have a time to write the next one while I'm still doing other things and promoting or keeping my other books going with advertising?
That's a great question. For me, it's just been intentional, and I think it's been easy because I love the writing. So I love that aspect of it. With 4 kiddos, once the kiddos wake up, the day is just a whirlwind. So I set my alarm for 4 in the morning, do this very intentionally, and that's kind of a quiet sit and reflect time. I'd much rather write at 4 in the morning, just kind of sit there with my thoughts than to market or dive into that other piece. So for me, that strategy worked really well. Because I write best during that quiet early morning hour. I can market while the kiddos are running around the house and all of that good stuff.
Great. Now, Diana had a question here. She said the book I'm writing is actually suitable for a series. I have far too much information from one book. Are there certain strategies for tying the two together? Also, I'm developing a course, and that would be a natural follow-up to the book series. How can I maximize this when contacting publishers?
All right, great question. Break that down for me one more time, as I heard.
So the first question is really, I have something that's more suitable for a series. How do I best go about breaking up the ideas that you talked about having shorter books already? Yeah. But how do I take that thought and like, I have this one book now. How do I make it intentionally into smaller books?
So I love the phrase "an inch wide and a mile deep." That's something that really stuck with me and really helped me a lot, is to say, if I've got a big topic, how can I break that down into a smaller topic and then really, really go deep? So one example is if I was doing a book for speakers, it might just be one book on how to overcome the speaking butterflies or speaking jitters. And that's one small aspect of speaking, but you can really go deep with that topic. And it's probably the one of the most needed. I've heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I hear a lot of people say fear of public speaking actually ranks higher than the fear of death. Now, if that's true, you've got a big pain point and a big market who wants to know how to overcome the speaking jitters. Now, you could do an entire book then on how to write your speech. Then you could go on and do an entire book on how to organize your speech. And of course, easily, a lot of people would take that and put all of it into one. But if you're keeping that idea of an inch wide and a mile deep, you'll take just one topic and then you'll mine into it as far as you can go.
Awesome. Yeah, I can say from practice myself, I've been doing that because my books, although they may be on issues that have to do with back pain, it was like, let's devote on one specific thing that people come to, which was sciatica, right? And then we can go on and talk about other parts. And so I'm definitely a big proponent of doing that well. And I haven't heard it said quite so nicely, but that's definitely something that I think people should focus on. And then one question here was someone who asked, if you're doing something like that and you plan on having that series of books, what's the best way to tie that series in so people realize? Do you say book one at the start of the series? Or I know you have a specific type of cover patterns and things that you do. What's the best way to tie this in so people realize, hey, there's more from this author?
Yeah, great question. One thing I know is that you can, in Amazon, mark your book as a series. And there's that checkbox in the setup page where it asks, is this book part of a series? You check that box, and then you can title your series specifically. At the end of your title, it'll come up as book one in the Creative Conversation series or book one in the Speakers series. So it's another great way to get your keyword in, get that right up at the title, and let people know right off the bat, hey, this is part of a series and there's more out on that topic.
I know one of the things you said was there's other people that are be good at spelling and grammar. There's other people there. So now to be consistent with your writing, what is that your go-to team of people that you have? Because you have books that are out, you have marketing, you have writing, you have grammar, all these things. Kind of what is your core team that you work with to make sure you can be consistent?
Great question. And I'm just going to go ahead and give you the flat out honest answer is when I started publishing, I was on the super budget. So my cover designers were Fiverr cover designers. My editors were my mom and dad. Dad's a retired English teacher. So it was, hey, Dad, I don't have a budget. And, please catch as much as you can. And he'd send that back. And that's what I published. As I started making sales, all of a sudden I realized, okay, Grammarly is even better than what I've got going now. And I can afford that. So then it went to Grammarly and my dad. And I'd still get occasional reviews and remarks of, Jed, wish you had a better editor, wish you had, better proofer, this needs to be proofed. Well, this year, my goal is to go back and get all of my books professionally proofed. I'm doing that one by one. I'm about halfway there now. And so now I go to our Rolodex and we've got our list of approved proofreaders, and I've got two of my favorite that I work with. But that's really my process, is building that team over time. And so at first it was parents, friends, and family. Then it was friends and family and Grammarly. And now it's Grammarly and a professional proofreader. So I'm a big proponent of starting where you are and then growing over time. So kind of whatever budget you have available, I think you can publish a good book or a good enough book that later you can go on and tweak and improve from there.
Yeah, and I can say that I can echo this exactly because I did the same thing. Actually, my best-selling book right now is one that I created and my brother edited for me because I didn't have an editor at the time. And so he edited for me. We got going, and I actually was able to go back at one point and have an editor look through it, make some changes. But the best reviews I ever got on this book said the content in this book is great. I wish they had a better editor, and left 4 stars. And that actually, because you know how many people cared about the actual grammar in there? There's so few people, but they said this person actually reviewed it and was harsh on them, but said the content was great. That's one of the best reviews I've ever gotten on my book. It helped sell the book better than anything else.
That's awesome. I love it. And I was just talking to Chandler in a meeting. He said, and a couple of the staff said, we did the same thing. We didn't have, the resources to do what we wanted right out the gate. So we did the best we could with what we had and then grew from there. And I think that's key as an author, as a small business owner, to start where you are. And I'm so glad that I didn't wait, 4 or 5 years for everything to be perfect, but just did the best I could with what I had at the time.
Yeah, and that goes right back to your principle of being consistent with it. Because if you're waiting to the point where you can afford a good cover editor or cover designer or editor, and you're waiting to the point where you're like, okay, I'm getting all these things lined up and I need to have the team first, then you're getting yourself away from writing. All right. And so if that's holding you back right now, if you're one of those people that says, I just don't have that in place right now, don't let it hold you back, and just know you can actually go back and make these changes. It's one of the great things about self-publishing. I've gone back and changed my cover 3 times because I'm like, oh, I can now invest in a better cover for this book. And it does help. It gives me a reason to celebrate it. But you have to be able to say, okay, I'm working on this project, and when it's done, I'm going to continue and I'm going to work on the next project, but I'm not going to focus on waiting to do all my projects till everything's perfect. And I think you're a great example of that. And what would be kind of some of the biggest things that you've learned since you started doing this and to where you're now, that have helped you be more productive? What are some of the tips that you have? You said one was early in the morning. Second was writing goals, and having kind of that minimum. But are there any other things where you say, man, if this has really helped me hone in over the past, few months or the past year?
Probably the biggest is just monitoring my own self-talk, what I'm telling myself. I know probably, like a lot of authors, I can be the one who gets in my own way the most. There's times when I wake up and I write, I feel like everything's genius. I'm just so excited. And then I come back the next day and I look at it and I'm just like, nobody's going to read this. And so sometimes I have to remind myself, one, it's an experiment. We're just going to try it out. We're going to see what happens. I'm learning to not show my work to anybody. It drives my wife absolutely crazy, but she's like, Jed, I want to see what you're writing. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. If you make one critical mark, I'm going to think this is awful. I'm going to throw it out. If you give me a confused look, I'm going to think this is awful. My head talk's going to tell me, oh, Jenny doesn't like this. We've got to get rid of it. Or maybe you get this big smile and you're going to tell me, Jed, this is wonderful. I love it. And then the next day I'm going to get up to write. And let's say I'm on chapter 3. I'm going to say chapter 1 through 3 are awesome. Chapter 4 is not awesome yet. I'm going to be stuck. And I'm not going to get past chapter 4 because Jenny told me 1 through 3 are amazing. And I can't move on because nothing lives up to that standard now. And so for me, when I'm in that writing process, I'll tell everybody I'm writing a book, but I'm not going to tell you what it's about. I'm not going to show my work to you, because if you tell me, if you don't understand, if you tell me it's okay, if I think you're telling me it's okay, or if you tell me it's awesome, it's all going to hold me back.
That's definitely an interesting one for me, because I actually don't share my work with my wife either, because it's similar things. And I think there are some people that works great for, some people it doesn't. I'm happy to hear that I'm not the only one that does that. But I would take this even further and say, are there any tricks that you've learned in the preparation process? So when you're getting ready to write, whether it's your outlining, your mind map, or anything like that, that have helped you be more consistent with keeping your writing in progress, or keeping your goals set and keeping that word count higher?
Great question. One article that really helped me, and I got to dive into kind of the brain science a little bit more, but it said this. It says, right brain, left brain, one half of our brain is really focused on that creative writing. Other parts focused on details and critiquing. So you can get into the creative writing zone, or you can get into the editing zone. And for a long time, I wanted to do both. I wanted to write, and then I wanted to go back and clean it up. But the article said this: your brain doesn't switch back and forth well. You can either sit there and write creatively, or you can edit and you can critique well. But if you're trying to constantly write, edit, you're not going to be able to switch back and forth and do either one of those things well. And so afterwards, I'm like, okay, well, let me give this a try. I'm just going to write. And no matter how much I want to go back and change what I wrote the next day, I'm going to move forward with the next chapter. And that made a ton of difference. So now when I write, I know I'm just going to move on to the next thing continually. I'm not going to come back to the messy rough draft until all of the story, all of the books out of my head, and then I'll come back and get into editing mode. And for me, that was a huge game changer.
Yeah, I've definitely worked with a lot of people like that as well who are saying, yeah, I just constantly would see the spell check come on. And I would constantly see and I would constantly, or I would read it over. And so I do that. I tell a lot of people do that. Take the spelling grammar check off. Don't do it till you're done and ready for that. And then don't worry about rereading it until you've finished your concept and until you finish this. Sometimes it's the whole book. Sometimes it's a section. But yeah, even just having, for those of us that like to have this, there's most systems where you can take all those off, or even just have distraction free where it's just a blank page in front and there's no header bar, there's no font changes. You can take all of that off your screen. So you're just seeing the words that you type and you're not seeing anything else. And you can even have some of them have it centered in your screen. So that's what you're seeing. And you're not seeing the bottom of a page or a blank page. Because for me, that was one of the most intimidating things, was seeing the blank page. And so I would purposely have some text that would just starter text that I would put in the front of every chapter that I would eventually take back out. But it was just there so that I didn't see a blank screen, because that's what held me back. And so when I didn't see the blank screen, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I can keep going and I keep going. And I would eventually go back and remove a lot of that text. But it was something that was I had a purposeful thing. This is the first chapter of this book, and this book was going to be, I would just write this out in order to get past that blank screen. So let me see if there's any other questions from the group. If you guys have questions, let me know. Mary says, you've inspired me to put a chart on my wall with daily word count. Right now, it's 0 most days, but seeing it in black and white should make a difference. Shame works. So that's another way of doing it.
Hey, I heard one author who said, literally for that accountability piece, he jumped on Facebook and said, hey, next 10 people to comment on this post are my accountability partners. If my rough draft's not done, from beginning to end, by the end of this month, I owe you a $10 gift card to your, favorite coffee shop.
There you go. Put a little bit of pressure. I know when I speak with Chandler each month, and he's got his goals that he works in, he keeps himself accountable. And they have I think it's $100 bet who's going to make sure they get their most goals each month, and so making sure that it's something that even if it was $1, it's just the fact that you have to hand it over, right? That's the big thing. All right. Any more questions here for Jed? Go ahead and post them here. And if not, just know that Jed's here in our community. He's active all the time. He's one of our coaches here at SPS now. So if some of you guys are going to be partnered up with Jed, and just know if you have questions, you can tag him or you can tag me in the group. And Jed's a wonderful guy. He's always here in the group, and he's always continuing to inspire others. But he's also doing it. He's an author who's putting out books and putting them out, and not just saying I did it once. It's no, I'm continuing to do this, and I'm continuing to work just like everybody else in the group.
Hey, Sean, can I share one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was talking to Taylor this week, I love this idea of author advantage, and it's a new thing I'm trying to build into my writing now. So I'll be doing this with the next couple books that I come out. Is instead of just writing, I'm now looking and thinking, well, how else can I use this? How can I turn this into a speech? Got to do a marriage seminar about 2 months ago, and I'm starting to think, okay, now how can I write a book that if I got asked to do a marriage seminar, I could easily pull from that and make it easier for myself. So that phrase, author advantage, really stuck with me. He is doing author advantage calls for people who have a book. Can I give that link out?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I think if you are ready to say, okay, I'm wanting more than just this book. I want to figure out how I can be this author advantage and have this author kind of encompassing mindset. Definitely, I think it's worth for a talk with it. So this is, Jed's going to drop this link right here in the group chat. If you have difficulty, send it my way. I can drop it in there. And this is so that you can have kind of one of these author advantage talks with Taylor as well. And to start looking at that mindset of, like Jed's saying, it's something where you're like, okay, now it's not just the book. It's how do I make this a part of who I am so that I have the advantage when I'm starting to go and I want to speak, or if I want to do counseling or coaching or online courses. I have that advantage coming into it as an author. All right, so let's see if we were able to get that link in there.
I just dropped that into your chat.
Perfect. I will put it into the group. And then if you guys, again, if you have questions, we have a couple more minutes here, and then we're going to be jumping on to another call where Jed and I get to hang out again, I think, for some more SPS. Let me see if I can bring this up for you. Okay. Great. So as I'm putting this into the group, so tell me one more time what the link is for.
So this is for people who really want to start honing that author advantage. And this is something that I wish I did sooner. So my writing strategy kind of up to this point has been, I love writing and I love publishing, and it's kind of that quiet, reflective time. Got that introverted side to me that thrives off of that. So I said, okay, I'm just going to write and publish and write and publish, and, you know, kind of whatever happens, happens. But I'm now starting to realize there's so much more connected to that. There's marriage seminar opportunities, there's speaking opportunities, opportunities for classes, online courses. And I'm starting to look at that and think, you know, this is fun. I've got a message that I believe in, that I enjoy sharing with other people. And now that as I write books, I don't want to go back and reinvent the wheel every single time. So I think for me, that Toastmaster speech I gave was a big turning point in my thinking of, hey, every book that I write, I want to be prepared to turn that into a speech, or I'll be following up this 10 quick win series with some other books, just on my top 10 favorite ideas, because I'm realizing I can take 2 of my ideas and put them into a 5-minute speech. I could take 3 or 4 of those ideas, turn them into an hour speech. If I'm asked to give a all-day seminar, I could take, you know, all 10 of those ideas and stretch them out through the day, or maybe even through a couple days. And so it's really getting me to thinking about, okay, how can I use this to go beyond just the book? And for me, that's been exciting. As I shared some of these ideas with my wife, Jenny, she's super excited and says, hey, let's put on a marriage seminar this year that's even expands on what we did this last year. So it's fun watching her get involved in the process. And so really, I'm wanting to learn how to take advantage of the books that I'm putting out and make the most of them.
Awesome, man. So what's the next book coming out?
So my next one's for kids. I had that in the works for a while, but then I'm going to really dive into this 10 quick win series and do one really focus on 10 quick wins for personal growth and personal development. Don't have that title yet. But I love the whole counseling and psychology aspect. So it's really my 10 favorite strategies just for personal growth in relationships, in friendships, in achieving goals and getting stuff done that I want to do.
Great. All right. I'm looking forward to it. If you guys, again, if you have any questions for us, tag us in the group. Other than that, I'm going to let you go. Jed, any last words before we head out?
No, Sean, thank you. This was a whole lot of fun. It was awesome to be invited here. It's been fun being a part of the group and watching for a year and a half, and absolutely thrilled to be able to get on and like chat with you live. It was cool.
Sounds good, man. Hopefully we'll have you back for a bunch more over the next few months.
Sounds great.
All right. Take care, guys.